Hello and welcome to the Brand Hunch podcast, where we explore ideas and hunches around how marketers are growing great brands. It's a look under the hood at how much is marketing science and how much is built on a hunch. My name is Lindsay Rogers. My day job is Managing Director at Cello, and this started as a side project to uncover the magic and importance of having a hunch. Today my guest is Ainsley Pope. Ainsley started out in PR at Tourism New Zealand before jumping ship, what a pun, to Carnival Cruises, where she worked alongside former episode guest Jennifer Vandercreek, now CEO at Urban Surf. Ainsley moved over to PwC, to Westpac, and more recently was tasked with embedding an employer brand function at IAG's, ANZ's largest insurance group and parent company of NRMA. What I'm really interested in exploring today is embedding an employer brand function across an organisation and how it works effectively across departments outside of just marketing. This is maybe the less sexy, but arguably the 101 of brand building. So Ainsley, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here.
So throw me back to your early PR days. What enticed you initially into the world of PR?
I was an early school leaver. I didn't actually finish school. And I ended up going straight into a real administrative background at a law firm. And at that point in time, my scope on what my opportunities were was pretty limited. I didn't really expand my staff. I didn't stretch it. It's a polar opposite to where I am today. But I was really fortunate through those very first few formative years to end up working for a very generous and very small, only 5 people, gold mining and gold prospecting business. And the managing director there saw something and just said, you know what? You need to go further than this. How can I help you? What do you need? And I'm just like, I'm fine. I'm living the life. I'm getting a paycheck. I am really enjoying things. And he said, no, you need to have a little bit of a focus in life. So go away, have a look at what you actually genuinely want to do, and we'll set up a structure here to financially support you to do that. And so radio school, interestingly, was the first thing off the cab. And I applied and technically got in, but they came back and said you need tertiary education. And that took me into the path of, well, I actually really like communications. I like writing. I always have, either writing poetry or stories or newsletters for the company that I was working for at the time. I was an eager beaver on that one. And so, yes, I went in and did study at Waikato University in New Zealand. The first group and the first cohort on a new communications degree they had there at the time. And it just absolutely sparked me, the creativity, the interest, the now factor of PR I really enjoyed learning about. And so I grew my wings, went overseas. One day I was sitting on that tube and I was reading the T&T magazine. And lo and behold, there was a role at Tourism New Zealand, of all places, in London. And this is for a Kiwi expat who just went, this is gold. How do I get this role? And the rest is history from there. TNZ was deeply formative years for me, and almost a decade that stretched from London. I relocated back to New Zealand, Auckland for a stint, and then got the big ticket and landed an opportunity in PR in the Sydney office. And that was always my dream. I always had an affinity with Australia, so it was a very easy jump for me. From a PR perspective, it was really where things were going off. Getting earned media in a really creative space for a brand that was in its heyday, 100% pure New Zealand brand. And so there was a lot of exciting things during that period where PR was all about gaining incredible earned coverage. We could tell stories left, right, and centre, and they were lapped up. And that leapfrogged me into, okay, so what's next? How else can I stretch this PR gig? And that's where Carnival Australia came up with a really interesting scope and brief. That was at a point in time where there had been a narrative in the market about a particular brand under the banner of Carnival Australia that just needed to move, it needed to shift. And they came and said, you know, could you help us shift this narrative, and what would that look like? And so for close to 5 years, we did some really incredible creative work. So I went from giant rugby balls and circular key to giant Priscilla, Queen of the Desert shoes on top of Queen Mary II for Mardi Gras. And so it was a lot of fun. But there was a point in time where kind of looked up and I was like, alrighty, I've done very similar type of things for a long while now. What's next? Where's the innovation? Where's this industry going? What do I want to do that is going to keep the edge? By then, I had found I love working at the edge of things, just pushing the boundary a little further and seeing what happens. And so working with PwC is the difference at that point in time. We were a client. What they were doing and how they did it really struck a chord with me. And then obviously I struck a chord with them, having a PR background that they didn't have in their particular suite of skills at that point. And so we had a conversation and I went, all right, let's do a jump.
So tell me a bit about your time at PwC in the difference team. I know you had a strong emphasis on co-creation, co-design, working with all sorts of different people, behavioural scientists, creative directors, designers and so forth. I think also I was reading that you were shaping sort of programs of work around innovation labs and experiential events. How did you start? What did you come in? What was the MO that you arrived to? And sort of how did you start thinking about it?
At the time, the structure of the difference included an end-to-end creative communication suite that really looked at what does strategic comms look like. So the substance of the difference was this innovation lab type experience, but it was deeply experiential. It was very tactile, in person, and it was about how to work with the C-suite to go, what is your next phase? It was big, meaty work. And from a creative comms perspective, which was the name of the end-to-end suite, we looked at, all right, so you've landed on your strategy by going through this deeply experiential strategic design work. Now, how do we implement that and how do we roll it out and engage the much bigger audience of the business? And that was deeply insightful, a massive learning curve. And that moment in time where I went, wow, the power of internal comms, deeply underrated, deeply underutilized in the whole sector and the whole industry of brand marketing, PR, and internal comms. And that is where I really got the spark from, because I went, we can apply behavioral science to marketing very easily and to brand very easily. Internal comms, it's just as easy to do it. In fact, it might even be easier because you know your audience deeply. You can get such rich data, and you can also then go, and what is the science behind how we want to shift them to, and where do we want to shift them to specifically? And that's where my whole spark for that type of work really, really came from. And we did some incredibly creative work. The team there, exceptionally talented. And my stint was short, but radically impactful.
Organisational transformation has been a theme throughout your career for you. What lessons have you learned about what works and what doesn't in big times of change?
The key thing for me is the narrative. Why are we doing this change? Why is it important? Is everyone aligned to that same story? And by everyone, I mean leaders. Leaders need to be aligned to that story of the shift. Whether they're involved in it or not, they need to be across it because you need that support mechanism for sure. The second piece in there is brand. Brand actually does have to come in and have the conversation. It needs to form the backbone of it because it's what your people are attached to. It's what your customers are attached to. It's what your potential customers and people want to be attached to. So it needs to weave through the narrative. Really important to be able to do that. Cross-collaboration, cross-functional work has to happen. Siloed transformations really do fail and they don't embed and they don't last. So one key thing that I'd call out, the power and significance of the learning and development team. Buddy with them. They are rich in that the science-backed behavioural shifts that you're trying to drive. They have a deep understanding of what it would need to take to transform from one skill to the next skill. Pairing with them, I learned a lot across all the different clients that I worked with. Now, I had the great joy of doing a transformation within Westpac that was a brand new mortgages platform. The team that we pulled together was deeply cross-functional, from expert change managers and project leads and people who knew their craft inside and out on how to make change happen, to the L&D team who really had the ability to know what the shift was, right down to the level of skill and task. And then comms sat in the middle to go, all right, let's pull this story together and engage people, inspire people, help them keep motivated for that duration of time. I took everything from PwC's The Difference time, and I was able to apply it deeply, long term, for the work that we did on Customer Service Hub. We did edutainment instead of, informative education, which can be pretty dry. So we made it entertaining. We pulled on a lot of marketing insights and marketing tactics and PR tactics to really drive the ability to land transformation. And that's the thing that I would probably come out with all the transformation programs that I've worked on is experiment, do it low cost, do it frequently, apply those research elements in everything that you do. If you're doing external market research, do it internally too. Include your people on it. They have deep insight that is valuable. It is gold. And so being able to do that on a really frequent basis internally for major transformations, you're getting their buy-in before you even release the transformation. That was a gold one for me.
In terms of creativity and internal comms, I think internal comms has been on a huge journey. When I think back to 10 years ago, talking head videos and fairly dry content, we as consumers and as people have evolved in terms of our taste and I guess nous for authentic content and also just more entertainment in content. How do you think internal comms has ridden that wave? And you're talking before around edutainment and more investment in creativity. Do you think brands are taking that up more? Do you think that's a sort of an area of growth? Because ultimately the best messages land when there's creative intention and it captures attention of an audience. What's your perspective on internal comms and creativity and what works?
Over probably, I'd say the last decade of my experience in that area, I have definitely seen the investment cycle go round and around. It's needed, then it's not needed. So it's actually learnt to do things on a low budget, but with big impact. It has learnt to be very considered about what it says, when it says it. And the real beauty of internal comms is that it really is the only function within most organizations that has the helicopter view of everything at all times. So I use internal comms really as sort of a lighthouse to help me find the path to be able to communicate what I need out, to put a campaign out internally, to have the discussion around timing of specific things, to ask them, when am I going to have the greatest impact with the work that I'm wanting to do? I use them to strategically talk about what is the sentiment of the business, what is the tone, where are we about to go to? That might not have yet been announced, but actually I need that because I'm in a transformation phase or I'm in a release phase of something. They are my go-to team and people, and that is their strategic ability that is deeply nuanced to any other area within the business. From a delivery perspective, the creativity I adore because there is a real sort of sense of let's pull this together and see what we can actually create. If we don't have the budget to do it, but we know our people need this information, how can we make it the best we possibly can? So they get very, very good at finding methods and ways to engage with either very specific channels or very broad scoping channels. And I think that's the next step for internal comms. You're seeing a very diversified approach to how people within an organization are consuming information. They are not only geographically dispersed, but they are intergenerational now. There is at least 5 generations in large organizations, and you need to be able to connect with them on all levels. You need to be able to connect with people who love the office and those who do not. You need to be able to feel how you can bring a sense of belonging across all these different zones, time zones. You're looking at the silos approach. How do you do that through a screen? How do you get people who are at capacity? How do you get cut through to them with something that is critically essential to them? So all of these sort of complex needs really come together.
Back to your Westpac project, the huge transformation program. I think you had over 35,000 stakeholders and employees. That's a huge project or a huge ship to shift. I also think it was across 9 or so countries. How did you think about galvanizing people that have totally different cultural perspectives on the role of brand in their life?
So the first thing that I really looked at was going, how do we create a sense of place and a sense of belonging? And that really led to, it needed an identity, something where people could actually connect with and go, oh, you're also working on that program. Fantastic. Or that random moment when someone is emailing you from a different time zone, different part of the world, or a different topic of the transformation, you go, oh, okay, great. We're all part of the same. Got it. And so identity was really important. We created our own identity internally. It was never used externally. We had very clear guardrails around it, but it also meant there was a bespoke moment for the many thousands of people who worked on this particular project to go, we have a sense of belonging because we have a specific identity to us. And this was important for those that were working with third parties as well, because as a consultant, as a freelancer, you really do want to build that sense of partnership and that sense of belonging with the client that you're working with. And if you can adopt their brand and if you can adopt their purpose and be part of that world with a simple tool such as a logo at the bottom of your email, or we ended up sending out pins all over the world, people going, hey, you're wearing that. I know which program you're on. That sense of belonging really does support engagement. It supports productivity. It supports that sense of belonging of creating something. And that belonging comes from a sense of purpose and knowing the narrative and what we're all there to do.
Awesome. Thinking about employer brand, do you think that company values matter? And what do good company values look like?
Yes, is the short answer. Yes, they matter. Values are a tool to help you make decisions, whether it be for a corporate or a small business or an individual. I'm a very big believer that values are the thing that you can come back to, trust and rely on when you're a little bit unsure on things. Spending time to be able to prepare them with quality, with thought, and even test your values. You know, we're being challenged by this. Will that value help us? Okay, great. Good. We can have confidence with this, that we can back ourselves. So yes, I think values are deeply important. I think that sometimes large businesses can just be overwhelmed with the sheer things that they need to know. But it's that moment of going, they just need to resonate and be memorable to be able to help in those moments of decision and questioning.
One thing that I struggle with is, I've seen countless large organisations over the years with very similar values. There's inevitably one around customers at the centre of everything we do. There's something else around care and something else around, a high performance team or knowing our staff. How do you differentiate them and give them meaning that matters, that's authentic, that people feel like, no, this is true to this workplace and not just become a little bit of a corporate cliche?
I don't think they need to be unique like a CVP or an EVP. I think they need to be true to your purpose and how you're asking people to show up every single day. What makes them true is how you live them. The more cliche, the more people will run away. So I'll try and avoid cliche. I do like to try and be a little bit different when I'm thinking up some of these words and some of the things, but I test them. And if I am working with, a business that loves to be a little bit edgy, they'll go with that because that's actually part of who they are innately.
When you think about organisations, large organisations that have people with tenure of 30 or 50 years and been with the organisation a long time, they obviously embody certain values, but they may not be eye to eye with where management feels the business is heading. How do you think about whether it's values or EVP or just employer brand at the intersection of who we are as a history, but who we want to become?
This is a hot topic. That whole, how do you value and create value from the experience you have within the organisation? And how do you keep them engaged, especially those that are at the 20, 30-year tenure, and feel respected for their tenure? People are staying longer within the workforce. They are transitioning more frequently across sectors. And we've got, wonderful Gen Zers coming in who are just going, all right, I want to absorb, but I want to do. And so it really is this fine balance of going a nice, steady operational pace that feels known and valued versus one that has aspiration. Those with tenure want that too. Don't forget that they are staying with you because they believe in what you do. That aspirational element for any business is key to the level of engagement that your people drive. How you share that aspiration, that's the key. And that comes back to, the joys of internal comms, deeply understanding who the people are within the business. I get a lot of insight and information by those who have been there for a long tenure, because they can tell you how that customer has changed. Whereas the new starters, they're just entering their career. They've probably potentially got aspirations to move on, move up, move out, and they're just there for potentially the paycheck. How do you help them be inspired? You really lean on that wisdom that you've got in the room right next to them. And then how do you talk to them both about your aspiration? That is the skill of your internal comms, and that is where your nuance is going to come in. That's the key.
Let's talk a little bit about your most recent IAG role. So you moved over to IAG, you were responsible for the employer brand function of a company with around 12,000 employees across Australia and New Zealand. For those unfamiliar, what does an employer brand lead role entail day to day? What did you come in to do and how did it go?
Employer brand is really in its infancy in Australia. And I'm an infant in this space as well. I'll be really open and honest on that. I'm definitely bringing my experience across many different areas of comms and brand and marketing and PR. But the joy of it was being able to explore that with IAG. And the brief coming in was they delivered employer brand in all sorts of different ways within the business already. That was there. It just needed a cohesion and bringing it together and a focus, so that the focus could then drive investment, could then drive a consistent delivery and experience. And that delivery and experience being internal and external. So from employer brand, what does it do? It helps elevate a employer to be a place of choice to work. So very much like a product, for example, you want people to purchase the product. Employer brand looks at how do we create this place as somewhere where someone wants to come and work. Who you need in your camp to be able to do that. Talent acquisition, people and culture, corporate communications, corporate affairs. You do need marketing and you do need brand, 100%. And those two being more the external lens focus. You also need the buy-in from the people internally. That was a really big one that I learned through this experience. But what we were able to achieve was actually just this amazing channel now. You've got a voice for what it's like to work at IAG. And that really resonated with a good number of people.
Tell me a bit about your process from day one when you started. Where did you start? You mentioned that it was around cohesion and bringing things together for clarity. Tell me about the job to be done.
Really started with EVP, so employee value proposition. It's really what is the promise that we are giving to the people who already exist and are here, and also what is the promise that we are inviting people to come and join. And so we really looked at, well, this is more than a tagline. It needs to be a lived experience. It's exactly like a customer value proposition, and the two need to support each other. You can't disconnect between them. And so we were really looking at, well, there's a beautiful cultural way. It's called the IAG way. And it was very deeply ingrained. It included the purpose, the values, mindset. How can I forget that one? Because that's actually where our EVP came from. I was really looking at it. I had heard feedback sort of time and time again, just saying, please just don't add more things for us to remember. And I really understood that. Large organization, many strategies on a page. And you just want something like the values where people would just go, got it. So the IAG mindset is ready for anything. And it was a very simple transition to go, well, if we're ready for anything, it means we're ready for you. We're ready for your career. We're ready for your growth. We're ready for, collaborating with you, inviting you to participate, to grow with us, to, make sure that we can live our purpose together. And it was an open door invitation. That's what it was. And it was an easy one internally to make for people. And then externally, we had to work on how do we communicate that.
So an EVP that sounds something like, we're ready for you, sounds like there's a lot of operational deliverables that are also required to underpin delivering on that. How much of that is your remit, and what do you do if you're in a role where the operationalizing isn't adequate and you're sort of painting a great picture as an EVP without maybe the backbone?
It's deeply important. That cross-functional work is essential. And this is why I wanted to bring in corporate affairs into that mix of who you need to cross-functionally work with. Traditionally, employer brand is very much talent acquisition driven or people and culture driven. What corporate affairs brings into it is that brand reputation. It's what do we want to be known for? What do we want to stand up for and stand out for? And especially those last two, really critical to employer brand, because you need to define yourself in the market and be different. So really getting clarity on that, which is usually the realm of corporate affairs space, owning that reputational design. And so you bring those three together and you can have really great conversations. If you're in that space of, all right, we've got an EVP and we need to operationalize it now. People and culture, for example, might look at what is the end-to-end experience of our people? What does onboarding look like? What does career pathways look like? And what does exit look like? So you start there, then have a chit chat with talent acquisition and go, all right, what's our funnel in? What are all the diverse ways? And that for me, oh my gosh, that is where things are really taking off right now. I was getting really excited about that particular space. And one thing, if you're a marketeer and you're feeling a little stale within your category and you just want to do something a little bit different, talent marketing, it has so much potential. And applying your skills from a product lens to actually going, all right, how do I engage people and bring them in? It's a match made in heaven, those two. So that's my sales pitch for talent acquisition. The next piece in that mix is understanding, that funnel process is very split and very diverse these days. And then your other piece too is actually, well, what's our brand lived experience out there? And making sure that it's not incongruent with that. And from a place like IAG, obviously we are a house of brands. So that meant we are not the voice of our product. We are not the voice of insurance to customer. Most certainly we are the voice of insurance as a sector and as an industry. And so that was really important to define and help when we're talking to the businesses going, all right, so how do we attract people in? IAG as a brand itself, not significantly known in comparison to the likes of NRMA, CGU, WFI. They are known brands because people buy that product and deeply connected to them. Why on earth would we not leverage that? Why on earth would we not want to encourage people to come and join those brands and be part of our journey? And then the door is really wide open because the scope of what you are introduced to far exceeds what would be just in one brand. It takes time. Do your small wins, do your testing. Lean on your employee network groups. They are a goldmine. People join employee network groups because they have something to say. They have something to contribute. And when you ask them to contribute, it's powerful.
Are those networks groups sort of like champions? And have you had experience in creating or I guess developing champions for their subgroups or niches?
I was really fortunate that joining IAG, there was a highly engaged group of champions and brand champions already. They were the ones who would receive very regular updates on what's going on in the business culturally. They would get, exclusive peek at the engagement survey results before they were released so that they could help, embed them and especially the action plans that resulted out of them. And so being able to go into that cohort and go, all righty, we're going to have a look at what our brand stands for, what our EVP is, highly engaged. That was fantastic. It's the best investment that you can make because that's employer brand is, there's about 12,000 people at IAG. That's 12,000 ambassadors if you got them all. But be realistic. Start small. Use the channels that are open and available to you and start with internal comms. Get them on board. Ask them for their advice. Really use their direction. Include them in the testing because they will open doors that you don't even know exist.
What do you think, if any, is the role of external consultants or agencies or creative support in the context of employer brand and internal comms? Is it that externals provide a different perspective or is it just they don't quite get the culture and authentic internal comms, for example, should be developed internally?
This is a challenging one because I've been both. I am both. And I would say there is absolutely a space and a place and a need for external thinking when you're doing this type of work. And the reason being, I worked with phenomenal Future Brand Australia on the brand evolution for IAG. And what that brought was a level of sophisticated thought because I was in the day-to-day all the time. What I could bring to their thinking was that moment of operationalization, going, I can help you navigate, I can connect you to people, I can help you figure out if that's even doable or not doable. I think it's a true partnership opportunity that is always required.
In 2023, when you'd been in your role for about a year, IAG was highlighted as having one of Australia's happiest workplaces. How did you reinforce things like purpose and recognition in day-to-day comms so that those words weren't just posters on a wall or a tagline and an email signature? And how have you thought about onboarding people or new team members into the brand?
This was very exciting for us to see as well at the time. Culturally, the business really focused on what are the things that make people feel like it's a good place to work. And the key ones there are, do I feel like I've got a sense of purpose? Do I add value regularly, if not on a daily basis? And am I recognised for the work that I actually do? And so that is a culture that needs to be driven and created. Employer brand can't do that in its own entirety. Its role is to amplify that culture, promote that culture, share that culture, tell people about that culture. One example was a phenomenal recognition platform IAG uses. It is very easy. You can do it on your mobile phone. It can be as simple as, thanks so much for joining that meeting. I really needed your support in that. Right through to, holy cow, epic project, just nailed. Here's an award nomination. It goes right through the full gamuts. Those full gamuts, no matter what it's for, science shows the endorphin rush, the energy that it creates, sense of belonging, sense of gratitude and the value that has been seen, and the reciprocation of. So you receive one, you want to give one. And that just drives a really brilliant cycle of recognition. It comes with a balance though, 100%. This isn't a happy place because we tell each other we're really good at what we do all the time. We also, within that same platform, people were giving really constructive recognition, going, that was a challenging moment for you and you got over it. Why don't you share what that challenge was so we can all learn from it? There are the moments of let's get real and make this real because that was hard.
It's a great point. There's so many people that I've sort of met over the years where organisational positivity has swung too far into almost like toxic positivity where everyone's great and everything's awesome and good job to everyone, and perhaps losing sight of constructive feedback. And also not all ideas are great, and sometimes there needs to be an open and honest conversation for the betterment of the business and from a constructive perspective that's potentially lost when everyone's all doing great all the time. We all know that engaged employees drive better results, yet internal culture and comms often don't get the same budget or glory as external marketing, in fact, ever. How did you or have you ever had to demonstrate the ROI of strong internal culture and employer brand to any skeptics?
Yes. Many times over. And it does change and it does shift. You need to understand what is the motivator of the business. Because, just being able to do viewership on Viva Engage, comments on Viva Engage, how many people turn up to a town hall, that's all great, but how do you track the engagement? And for me, what this really leans to is a couple of things. Speed to adoption, and how quickly do people take up a particular change or a particular message. Speed to competency, and this is the reason why you want to partner with L&D, because how fast does a change actually get embedded or happen between one point to the next point? A lot of that will be down to the quality of the experience and training, the quality of the communications that you gave them, and also, was it the right thing to have done? All of those actually create a really great ROI moment. They are harder to track and measure. They take a longer stretch of time. And that is why a lot of people lean into engagement surveys and people culture surveys. They will give you that snapshot moment. But I would always suggest take a 24-month window on that. Some places will do the surveys every 6 months or every 12 months, but you need a good full 2 years.
While you were also at IAG, I believe that you elevated the organisation to number 2 best employer in Australia, which is really impressive and well done. In terms of a couple of the, ingredients for that success, do you think there are things smaller businesses could learn from the work that you've done, or they could implement without having 12,000 employees and a whole team centred around EVP?
Yes, 100% there is. Be present and be seen. Be seen beyond the traditionals, especially if you are inviting the Gen Zs into the workforce to come and work with you, because they aren't in the traditionals. If they're in the traditionals, they don't know how to use them. They feel they need to be present. They do know how to engage in the platforms that they are, active in and that they're innate to, that they've grown up with. Be there and have a conversation with them. Side note on this one, a good friend of mine actually owns their own business and they're really strong in TikTok. And they came to me and said, I really need to be able to beef up my team. What is this going to look like? And, how can I be able to use the traditional platforms? And I just went, but you're not there. Your brand's not there. Like, why would you all of a sudden be there if you're not there already? Use the channel that you've got because you're already talking to your people. And I'm a big believer. Your people are your customers. Onboarding is a really challenging one, especially for small to medium-sized businesses. It's a very, very big investment. It's very, very costly, and it is devastating when actually the person doesn't stay long enough for you to recoup that investment that you've put into them. So that one there is be thoughtful about what your onboarding looks like. Do they feel like that they belong straight away? What do your check-in milestones moments look like? Put thought into it. Don't just give them a laptop on the first day and go for gold. You know what you're doing.
You mentioned before that you feel like EVP work and employer brand work in Australia is fairly unsophisticated on a global scale. What do you think we'll see more of in the future?
I think that we're going to see a really connected growth to individual conversations and fostering of people on an individual level. Recruitment agencies have been doing this for decades. I think that will come in-house more, and the talent acquisition teams will be much more on the phones, having conversations, asking, where are you at? What do you want to do next? How can we help? It's a balancing act, though. I think that we are going to get a lot stronger in people wanting to know, what does a company stand for? And then let me actually see that in action. And then the final piece is be agile. Really have a look at what your people are saying internally about what is going on. Just before I left IAG, we were looking into refer a friend. And I think there's gold in that as well. It's definitely a space of growth within the Australian market, and there are many amazing people out there doing incredible work in-house and agency side as well in this space. My call out would be from agency side, really work with those that do understand employer brand, talent acquisition, and also have a look at what is the culture and the purpose work that has been delivered before. Not all agencies are going to be able to do a seamless transition from traditional brand work out to market to direct to customers.
Bit of a rogue question for you, but something I spend my time thinking about. How important is the main figurehead in a business translated into employer brand? Do you think they need their own almost like personal brand within the employer brand, or are they distinctly separate?
I love that question. I really think it actually depends on the individual. And then it also depends on what is the purpose and the reputation the business is trying to cultivate. I think that you really need to be thinking about actually what is the persona of our business and how does our leader reflect that? Because you've got that growth mindset and that drive type of persona, but you have a leader who is about stability, which that is a very real and very necessary strategy. Then it's just not going to sound right. It's going to sound weird.
Purpose-driven brand has been a buzzword for a while. What's your take?
I think it is an overused term because it's misunderstood. I believe that brand is an experience and that purpose is a feeling. You put those two together, though, holy cow, magic can happen. And that, for me, is the sweet spot.
Employer brand's an interesting one because when you think about external marketing campaigns or brand campaigns, you can look at, any industry website to see the latest campaigns and the positioning and how they're thinking about talking to customers. But EVPs, it's largely private. It's sort of like letting someone inside your house. How do you stay fresh and get fresh inputs when it's not easy to always see what a competitor or what a different sector's doing from an employer brand perspective?
That is where definitely working and getting close partnerships with agencies is really important for their breadth of scope and that they have across the industry. But also, too, strengthen your network, build your network of people, keep relationships strong, keep in touch with people and have conversations with them with openness. The joy of employer brand right now is because it's on an infancy growing into maturity. You can start those conversations now and people want to engage with you. How do I keep fresh in that space though? So all throughout my career, it's been a really strong focus to move into some sort of, conservative spaces, but be the edge of them. So I seek people outside of the sector, outside of corporate in particular, to help me keep my fresh thinking. Just having those coffees, having those online catch-ups. It sounds like it can take time, but when you're passionate about it, it's heaps of fun.
So that's you in your corporate career, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Tribal Chocolate, your chocolate brand. How did you end up in this world?
I started Tribal Chocolate because I saw a gap in the market to provide quality, premium, single origin hot chocolate that was as sophisticated as a macchiato, an espresso, and as good looking as, any coffee that you can get in a cafe. I was really tired of getting fluffy hot chocolates, which were just hot milk and sprinkles on top, marshmallows on the side, whilst I was having really important business meetings.
What are some of the lessons you've learnt through starting your own business that perhaps you never might have had in corporate land?
What it takes to put a product to market. That's the big one. That's one thing I haven't had in my career portfolio is actually product experience. I went from a wet product, which was pretty much hot chocolate in a flask delivered to people, and I moved into dry product, which required an external kitchen. And then going, all right, how am I going to distribute this? And I learned a lot about that. And so how I took all of those learnings into my corporate life, great example is IG Brand Evolution recently was going, all right, what are my pathways to distribution? How do I get this brand out to 12,000 people and getting them to use it from day one? So the knowing what distribution now looks like, having amazing and eye-opening conversations with experts in the field, that just took me to a whole nother level of awareness and understanding of product design and delivery.
Last question, thinking back on your career across all the various organisations you've worked with, what is one or two standout campaigns or projects that you've delivered that you think, yeah, that was a game changer?
There's a couple, and they all have one theme that's attached to them, and it is human-centered experience. How has that campaign made someone feel and connected to it? And the first one would be being part of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander visual identity for IAG. Deeply humbling, a beautiful experience of co-design that asked corporate brand to go, how do I translate this into a feeling that is very deep and connected to people? And I needed to go and seek expertise on that. At IAG, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community is strong and it is growing, and it's a beautiful place to have conversations. And so we came together, we collaborated, and we listened, and we sat with, and we interpreted words. And the immediate response was, I feel seen. I feel I can share this knowing I am part of something greater than myself. And I feel like I belong. And that, for me, I could walk away and go, whoa, that just got me in the guts right there. Yeah. And then the second one was at Carnival Australia, working with Cunard. We had the amazing opportunity to acknowledge 100 years of Anzac. And so we did a PR moment that ended up being extraordinarily emotional. The sign 100 years was printed in 3D, very, very large. It was sort of a 2-person height. And we asked people to come down to be on site next to the ship they could write their message on the poppy. And so the 100 grew over time from this black 3D structure that just had the numerals 100 to covered in poppies of messages. And we had extraordinary moments of families coming down, photos of people who had died at Anzac, and soldiers and stories, and just incredible, incredible moments. The media coverage was exceptional, but that wasn't the reward. The reward was all of these people connecting around one thing that they could be part of.
Yeah, a beautiful example, I think, of the red thread throughout your career, which is bringing meaning to the words, making things matter, storytelling, the importance of authenticity. Congratulations on all of your success throughout your career in various roles. I can't wait to see employer brand championed into the future.
Me too. Thank you so much.
My biggest takeaway chatting with Ainsley was this idea of 360 view of brand. And this podcast talks a lot about the external facing elements of brand building. But what Ainsley does is shines a light on the importance of galvanizing employers, both in terms of the employees that are working within the organization, but attracting the right fit and right type of people to deliver on that brand experience. And I love the idea that brand is an experience and purpose is a feeling. I think that summarizes her work really well.